Lando Norris crossed the finish line at the 2026 Hungarian Grand Prix roughly 15 seconds clear of Max Verstappen, claiming his first victory of the season. It was the result that should have simplified everything about his year, the champion snapping his win drought, McLaren finding form again heading into the summer break. On the radio before his final pit stop, Norris told his race engineer, Will Joseph, that he would pull a 10-second gap on worn tires. He then did exactly that. It was, by his own account, one of the best drives of his career. Behind him, teammate Oscar Piastri had led the early stages before losing time in contact with Carlos Sainz, then retiring with a gearbox failure, clearing the road for Norris to convert pole position into a win that looked, on paper, like the story fixing itself, except in the same week, Norris said things about the sport that the win was never going to resolve, and they weren't even all from the same moment. Back in early June, ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix, Norris was asked whether he could see himself racing into his 40s the way Lewis Hamilton has. His answer, I want kids and I want out of here. Fuller quote matters. He also said he doesn't want to spend half my life driving cars, that he wants to go and live my life doing other things, but also that he isn't leaving anytime soon and still has a long contract to fulfill. It wasn't a retirement announcement. It was a driver naming a timeline mismatch between how long he plans to keep winning and how long he actually wants to stay. Then, separately, in the week of Hungary itself, Norris went further in a different direction. He said F1 has become a business that puts profit ahead of sport. He said the regulation changes exist partly to make room for new manufacturers like Audi and Cadillac. He said he isn't convinced the 2027 tweaks meaningfully change that direction. He suggested traditional fans might not love what the sport has become. F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali responded by defending the sport's commercial growth, more races, more manufacturers, more investment, as necessary for its future. Both are arguably right in their own lane. Commercially, F1 has never been stronger. Competitively and culturally, Norris is describing a real tension that exists alongside that strength. There's a third data point worth holding against both of those. At Silverstone, asked whether he could beat Verstappen if they were ever teammates, Norris said, I do believe I can beat any driver. That's a driver speaking from the peak of his confidence, sitting right next to a driver who's already talking about walking away. Here's where the numbers matter, and where it's worth being precise. After Hungary, Norris sits fifth in the championship on 128 points. Kimi Antonelli leads on 219 points, with a 50-point gap over Hamilton in second. That gap belongs to Hamilton, not Norris. Norris himself trails Antonelli by closer to 90 points. So this isn't a driver on the verge of a title fight talking about walking away from the top of the mountain. It's a driver delivering one of the best performances of his season, in a car that's finally competitive, while sitting fifth and still finding room to say the sport itself has changed for the worse. Same driver, same week, a win that argues he's exactly where he should be, and comments that suggest he's already thinking about not being here at all. Look closely at the sequence, because the order matters. The Monaco comments came first, weeks before Hungary, when Norris was asked a direct, personal question about longevity, not about the sport's business model, not about regulations, but about his own future as a 40-year-old driver still racing. His answer wasn't hedged the way these questions usually get hedged. He didn't say we'll see or I'll take it year by year. He said he wants kids. He said he wants out. Then, almost in the same breath, he pulled back, a long contract, no plans to leave anytime soon. Two things stated by the same driver in the same interview, a stated desire for a life outside the car, and a stated commitment to finishing the contract he signed. The Hungary week comments belong to a different category entirely. These weren't about Norris personally. These were about the sport's direction, profit placed ahead of sport, regulation shaped partly to accommodate incoming manufacturers, stated skepticism that the 2027 changes alter that trajectory in any meaningful way. This is a driver, mid-championship, mid-drought, using a platform earned by winning to say something critical about the structure he operates inside. He suggested that longtime fans of the sport might not recognize or embrace what it has become. Domenicali's response wasn't framed as a rebuttal aimed at silencing Norris, it was a defense built on a different scoreboard. More races. More manufacturers. More investment. Those are stated facts about F1's commercial trajectory, and by that measure, the sport is expanding. Norris wasn't disputing those numbers. He was disputing what those numbers cost the version of the sport that longtime fans recognize. The Silverstone quote sits apart from both of the other statements. Asked a hypothetical, a straight competitive question about Verstappen as a potential teammate, Norris didn't equivocate. "I do believe I can beat any driver." No qualifiers attached to that sentence, no modesty built into it. That's the voice of a driver who still believes he's building towards something at the top of this sport, even while, weeks earlier, describing wanting out of it. Set the championship table next to all three quotes and the picture gets harder to simplify. 128 points, 5th place, a gap of roughly 90 points to the championship leader. That's not the position of a driver dominating a season and openly weighing retirement from a place of total control. That's a driver mid-pack among the front-runners, delivering a career-level drive in Hungary, while carrying, in the same stretch of weeks, 3 separate public statements that point in 3 different directions. A personal timeline that has an exit built into it, a structural critique of the sport's priorities, and a competitive claim that puts him above every other driver on the grid. The Hungarian Grand Prix result itself deserves to be stated plainly, without the surrounding commentary attached to it. Norris took pole position. He converted it into a win margin of roughly 15 seconds over Verstappen, finishing the race having told his engineer in advance exactly what he intended to do with his tires, then executing that plan to the second. Piastri, who had controlled the early laps from the front, lost that position after contact with Sainz, and his race ended with a gearbox failure before the finish. None of that is in dispute. It is the clean, factual account of what happened on the track in Hungary in 2026 that what sits alongside that result is not a single narrative but 3 separate ones, each drawn from a different moment, each answering a different question, none of them designed to resolve the other 2. The Monaco answer addressed a question about age and longevity. The Hungary week answer addressed a question about the sport's commercial direction. The Silverstone answer addressed a hypothetical about a specific rival. Norris didn't set out to build a unified statement about his career across these 3 moments. Reporters asked 3 different things, on 3 different weeks, and he answered each one directly, without visibly reconciling them with each other. The championship standings provide the frame that makes those 3 answers worth examining together. A driver sitting first or second, closing in on a title, saying he wants out in a few years, reads as a champion planning a graceful exit on his own terms. A driver sitting 5th, roughly 90 points off the lead, saying the same thing, reads differently, because the timeline he's describing doesn't obviously include catching up first. And a driver in that same 5th place position simultaneously stating he can beat any driver on the grid is making a claim that has to be evaluated against the current gap in the standings, not just against the raw talent question it was asked about. Domenicali's defense of the sport's commercial expansion and Norris's critique of that same expansion are not, strictly, contradictory positions. They're measuring different things. F1's growth in races, manufacturers, and investment is a stated, verifiable trend. Norris's claim is about what that growth trades away, in his view, for the sport's competitive or cultural character. One is a claim about scale. The other is a claim about substance. Both claims can be accurate at the same time without either one cancelling out the other. The win in Hungary doesn't settle any of the 3 statements Norris made across the weeks around it. It doesn't confirm or deny whether he's genuinely planning a shorter career than Hamilton's. It doesn't confirm or deny whether the 2027 regulations will change the sport's direction the way Domenicali argues they will. It doesn't confirm or deny whether Norris would, in fact, beat Verstappen given a level playing field. That remains a hypothetical, since the 2 have never been teammates. What the win does confirm is that Norris, at 5th in the standings and roughly 90 points off the lead, is still capable of producing one of the most complete performances of his career, on a weekend when he'd also spent time describing a version of this sport, and a version of his own future in it, that does